What's up, it's Alpha Wolf with Wolfpack Gaming. Hawkeye was recently added to our roster of heroes, and with the release of a new hero comes the release of a new build video. Today, I'll be showing you guys my Hawkeye build, Particle Storm. I'll give you an overview of the build and then break it down into sections for the stats, gear, skills, and then the end of the video will show you some gameplay of the build in action. First off, I want to start off with giving you a little overview of the build to kind of explain what the goal is here. So this entire build is focused around the new major artifact Void Tech Responder, which amplifies your particle damage by a massive 30%. This build is a ranged build that focuses on cluster and split shot arrows, both with a Pim particle status effect on them. We'll also be taking advantage of the battery effect. Now that we have that out of the way, let's move on to the stats you'll be focusing on. Your primary stats will be Precision for your ranged damage and Resolve for survivability. You want Resolve over Resilience if possible, because Resolve scales your defense rating better than Resilience does. Your secondary focus is going to be Intensity, so that you apply your status effects faster to gain the battery effect. Hawkeye is surprisingly dependent on his gear and perks. With that being said, gear is crucial for this, and most likely any build for him. My gear isn't exactly what I'd prefer it to be, but it still does the job until I'm able to find the gear to perfect the build. Beginning with the melee gear, which is quite possibly the most important piece of gear for this build, you want to find a gear piece with Pim Particle Split Shot. This applies Pim particles to your split shot attack, triggered by holding the heavy attack button. This combines with the major artifact Void Tech Responder, giving the particle damage a 30% boost. Next, the ranged gear, which is the Eagle Arrowhead Mark 6. You can obtain this gear from the Elite Heroic Hive, which is the 14-floor hive known as Last Avenger Standing. This piece is also very important with the Pim Particle Cluster perk, also applying particle damage to your cluster arrows, which in turn will increase their damage by 30% as well. On top of that, it also has the Hunter's Talent and Cluster Destruction perks. Hunter's Talent increases the charge rate of your tripwire arrows by 20%, and I'll tell you right now, it's absolutely a noticeable increase in firing speed. Cluster Destruction gives a 20% increase to damage, stun, and status amounts of your cluster arrows as well. I do want to let you know that the second perk for particle damage is a random roll, so you may have to farm for this gear piece before getting it to roll particle damage on cluster arrows. If it takes you a few tries, don't feel bad. I have 5 of them. Moving on, we'll look at the defense gear now. I use Eagle's Armor, which can also be obtained from the Elite Heroic Hive. This gear piece is mostly to add to your survivability, which you'll need in the Mega Hive, and for any endgame content that we will hopefully get eventually. It has the Untouchable Shield perk, which grants Nanite Shield when killing an enemy with Boomerang Arrow or Swordsman's Prodigy, but most notably it also triggers when perfect evading, which you should be doing a lot as Hawkeye. Nanite Shield completely negates the attack, but combined with the first perk, Recovery Invigorator, it will also give a brief 20% damage reduction. And finally, we have the heroic gear. Like I said, my build isn't quite perfected yet, but I wanted to make sure I got this build out for all of you to see, so right now I'm simply using this bow strictly for the stats. But if you can find one with increased damage or crit chance to power attacks, that's what you want, since your split shot arrows are considered power attacks. Obviously, you'll want to be using the Void Tech Responder as your major artifact for the Pim particle bonuses, and we'll finish up the gear with the minor artifacts. You'll want to focus on your primary stats, but also the second perk of each. With my first artifact, I wanted extra precision, but I also was able to get a power attack perk which increases my split shot arrows by 10.6%. You'll want something like this if you can find it. Otherwise, simply focus on adding precision or resolve to your kit depending on which one is lacking. I did this with my second artifact and boosted my precision since I haven't found another artifact with the stats I want or the perk I'm looking for. Moving on to the skills, we'll start by going over the specialty tree and then touch base on the skills that are most important in the mastery tree. For your support heroic, I like to use critical care, which will increase your crit chance along with your crit damage. And the second skill is heroic recharge, which gives a 30% chance of enemies that die within the affected area to drop heroic orbs. This will charge our heroics faster so we can apply our shock status effect with them more often to increase our damage with the battery effect. For the assault heroic, you'll use Ion Surge to deal shock status damage on enemies within the area, which will combine with your particle damage on your arrows, and then you'll use Strike Point to increase the status buildup of your assault heroic by 30% so that you can make sure the shock status fully applies to the enemies hit by it. And finally, for your ultimate, you'll use Twin Talons in order to apply shock damage for your battery effect as well. And then you'll use Hawk's Cry, which will taunt enemies, taking the enemy's attention off of you. Right now, the ultimate is bugged, and it isn't scaling off of Valor like it's supposed to, so its damage is incredibly weak. Otherwise, I'd use Bird in the Hand to give a chance that enemies would drop heroic orbs whenever the ultimate kills them. But it does such little damage right now, no one is going to die from it, so it's a waste of time right now. You could potentially use Hunter's Resolve if you wanted to increase survivability and regain health each time the arrow hits enemies. I just find that Hawk's Cry works well to keep the enemies distracted and off of me while it's active. Moving on to the mastery tree, I'll simply put a screenshot up that you can copy. I'll only be going over the more important skills in detail. Starting with the second slot in your melee tree, it'll be Sharp Fragments, which will increase your split shot arrow damage by 15%. Moving on to the ranged tree, these three are critical. You'll want all three for the cluster arrows: cluster damage, tripwire spread, and ensnared targets, which will obviously increase the effectiveness of your cluster arrows. The first slot in your intrinsic ability tree will be Return Fire, which will allow you to apply a debuff to enemies after perfect evading, which will increase ranged crit chance against them by 25%. When you perfect evade, you'll use your light attack to apply the debuff. The third slot in the same tree will be Extended Disruption, which will increase the duration of the debuff by 50%. As I said, these are the most important ones, but I would still recommend using the same skills I am and just copy the other ones from this screenshot, because the rest will still benefit this build. And that does it for the skills. Now on to the best part, gameplay of the build in action. I'll show a few clips while using the build just to give you an idea of how it works and the damage it can deal. There's a little bit of harm room from the custom harm room against some adaptoids just to show you the battery effect and essentially how much damage it can do when you actually have the battery effect applied. Then I've got some gameplay from the last Avengers standing. I hope you enjoy it. If you did enjoy this guide, don't forget to hit that thumbs up button and comment to let me know how this build works for you. I've also got plenty more videos and guides on the way, so make sure you subscribe for more Avengers content. Thanks for watching. Take it easy, everyone.